trust that, and you'll accept this fragrant point of view. You see, a person's life is written in the words that he paid for. You know that costs us something that's to do. Forget all you see and hear in the so-called public town. Embrace this life and how you live and what you do. Yeah, treat everybody with the peace you have inside. Do unto others like the good book says to do. Now I had to find several reasons to trust this. So many times I've heard the same lines through and through. You see, you walk down the road many times so blindly. Only thing that matters is the path you choose. A simple man would have gotten busted. The righteous man would have been accused. Looking down this road forever after. We all got something to lose. Deal me a hand now, Mr. Lucky. A straight of flush or a pair of twos. It really don't matter what I get dealt for this hand, this time. It doesn't really matter if I win or if I lose. Save your opinions for some other time. Didn't really write this song to amuse. Think about your life and what you're really after. Don't hide yourself behind another excuse. A rich man would have got just what he paid for. The poor would sing a song or two. Looking down this road forever after. We all got something to lose.
Good evening, Patriots. Can everybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can. Outstanding. Okay. Good evening, Patriots. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm very excited about this show. As some of you know, the Kennedy assassination has been something that I have been involved with from the standpoint of researching since the day it happened. So I can't tell you how excited I am and Lady Justice are to bring in our special guest, Christopher Fulton. And I just want to say that if you haven't bought the book yet, please go to his website and buy it directly from him, and not don't use the Amazon link. Use his link, get a signed copy, because it will be a collector's item in the future. We've got the link in the chat box, cmfulton.com. So if you haven't got the book, it's a must read. And without further ado, I want to bring in Christopher Fulton. Christopher, why don't you come in and say a few words, introduce yourself, give a little background if you wish, and talk a little bit about your book. And before I bring you on, I also want to say that your wife, Michelle, has been very helpful to me. I was anxious to get the book, and you guys sent me an email. I responded and asked for a tracking number. Michelle got right on that and got that information back to me. So I do want to recognize your wife, Michelle, because I know she's a big supporter of yours, and she's a big part of this book. So I just want to mention that. And Christopher, come in and say hello to everybody.
Well, hello, and I thank you, Paladin, for that mention about my wife. That'll make my evening a lot easier for me. And thank you both for Lady Justice and yourself for having me on. It's my pleasure.
We are ecstatic to have you here tonight, Christopher. Everyone has been very much looking forward to this interview. We mentioned that we might be able to get you on the show when we had our brief conversation this past week. Well, I shouldn't say brief. It seemed brief. It seemed like it went by in a flash, and that we could have talked for 20 more hours. I think you still owe us 18, as a matter of fact, if I've got that right.
I think it is 18. I think it
absolutely.
is. I think it is.
We are very excited to have you here. Did we lose Paladin? Oh, we did. We lost Paladin. Well, he'll be back in a moment. I would think he'll rejoin us. So I wanted to start out by, I'll just go ahead and take over here since we're waiting for Paladin to jump back in. But if you want to give, I know there are a lot of people in the audience that they've already read your book, they've got one on the way. But if you could give just a summary of what the book is about, how you, what spawned you to write the book, what the information covers, and what the heart of the book really says for you.
Well, that might take us another 18 hours, but let me just be brief. The book itself was written because I felt obligated. I felt obligated to the people that had perished to help this country survive, and I felt obligated to people personally that I had fought with to keep agendas from happening in this country that robbed us and have put us to where we are now. And I think about it quite often. And I didn't want to leave to my children. I wanted to make sure I got this at least out. And of course, I got a lot of activity when they heard I was going to write a book about this. Somebody came out from Washington and met with me, specific, who had been very connected to all the presidents since Roosevelt. His father had been working with Roosevelt, and he asked me a couple questions. He said, "Listen, you can write this book." I said, "Yes, I am. I think it has to be done, and I think the conversation needs to be addressed and this topic discussed." So he said, "Well, look, do me a favor. Don't put anybody into court on this, and change the names where you can, and then just keep it as civil as we can do it, and then you can get this thing out." I said, "Well, I'll do that. I'll agree with that." And I wrote the book. We wrote it initially. We had about 1,500 pages or so that we had written, trying to get as much of it in there as we could. We thought, geez, nobody's going to read this. Too long. So we condensed it. And The idea is basically to get at least 65% of the story out there so people are aware that it actually took place and that it happened, and provide a little bit of documentation that would go along with that. Now, the publisher was nice enough to print some of that in the book, but of course you can't print a whole case file, but you put some of it in there. And just to get the conversation going, let the American people know that this took place, and that we have a serious problem, that we've gone from the no accountability on the Kennedy assassination, no truth on that. There's been a lot of people that have been interested, and that's fantastic, and that's good. But we haven't had a real accounting of that. The official story still stands, and it's a lie. We've had the Gulf of Tonkin that's come by. We've had the impeachment of Nixon. We've had Iraq, weapons of mass destruction. We've had Reagan be shot at. We've had the New World Order be discussed. We've had 9/11. Now we've got this AI reset with COVID-19 and an agenda that's happening to us now. And all of this is, believe me, is connected. The same people that brought you all of this from the beginning is bringing you this now. And the American people are going to have to make some very hard and dire decisions in the near future. And I want to help in any way I can. So I wrote the book to get it out there to begin with. If I wrote too much, I'd never get it out, but I'm glad it made it out. It is being suppressed as we speak. I have been contacted by the vice president of Time in New York, who's a CFR member, who said, listen, you can either sign this book over to us or we're going to suppress it. I said, well, you go ahead and do what you got to do. I've done my part. I didn't sit in a jail cell for years fighting the Justice Department, the CIA over this, to hand this book over to you so you can suppress it. So it's out there. You can read the little bit behind the scenes of what was going on with the materials that were transferred from Bobby Kennedy to Evelyn Lincoln, who was President Kennedy's secretary, and then made its way eventually to myself and my friend and other colleagues that we had to try to do what we could to get this information out to the American public. And that was my responsibility to do that under contract. I actually had a signed contract to breach this with the American people, and Mr. Trump, before he was president, was an ally in this. He did help. He used his media contacts and tried to get it started. But as it just started to take off, and I had met with John, JFK Jr., of course, we had the Justice Department, the CIA, and everybody jump all over us because of the information that was leaking. It was national security concerns, and they put the national security ticket on myself, and of course I was arrested. They wanted to know the agenda and who was involved with President Reagan and everybody else. And as I was going through this process, of course, JFK Jr. Perished. And unfortunately, this whole story never got out to the American people. So that's why I wrote the book, was to get out and to have these discussions, because in a democratic and open society, we need these kind of discussions to take place. Secrecy is not has been overplayed, and it continues to be overplayed, and that's where we find ourselves right now. And anyway, I'm glad that we're here to discuss some of this.
Well, thank you for all of that information. You really covered a lot of ground there, and I hope that everyone can really understand the urgency and the message, or what I feel anyway. I'm speaking for myself right now, but we just heard Christopher's words in regards to how important this information still is for all of us today, and the urgency on making sure that the American people have access to that information. And that was a quest that Christopher so bravely followed through on, and made sure that we had the information provided in this book. Now, when we talked this past week, we talked about how the fact that, had you included absolutely everything that you experienced and all the information, we would have been looking at a War and Peace novel. We would have been looking at 1,500 plus pages. So this book is written in a format where you felt that the average American would have time to read the book and be able to absorb the content that's in the book, and the importance of the content, in particular the assassination records and the information that came into your possession and what an important role it played. Would that be accurate in
Well,
summing up?
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Rob. You know, my bottom line is always to think, how is this going to benefit? How is this going to help? Will it get out? Will people read it? Will the information be able to be discussed and so forth? So we didn't go crazy on writing like say War and Peace on this because there's too many years involved. But we wanted to get the basic story out. We wanted to write it in a way that the reader could kind of follow me behind the scenes because you're never going to get the truth from the media. The media is never going to tell you, nor does the United States government have any interest in telling you the truth of the matter on this and on other issues because it's not part of their agenda. One of the things I learned when I was being prosecuted with the Justice Department was that there's no justice in the Justice Department. It has nothing to do with justice. It has nothing to do with what you think it does. It has to do with fulfilling agendas. And that's the bottom line. It's very disappointing in so many ways, but our government has really been bought and paid for, and we're beginning to feel the populace of the United States and the world is beginning to actually at their front door feeling the effect of that right now. And that's why it's so important that we discuss this and have an open forum about this, because really everything is on the line, and by the time it's 5 years or 10 years from now, it's going to be too late.
Absolutely. I do want to commend you, Christopher, for the amount of suffering that you went through. And I'm sure if everyone gets this book and has a chance to read the trials and tribulations that Christopher went through along with his family, the amount of gratitude I have for you and what you went through and what you suffered through in order to keep with what you felt was the right thing to do, and then to still, to this day, many, many years later, over 20 years later, that you are so dedicated to making sure that the American people have this information. And I would like for you to start out by telling us also about your family background and the ties to the Kennedys, so people can get an idea of your background, a little bit of how you grew up, and also your connection with Robert White.
Well, I mean, some of this will come out later, but I grew up in Virginia, right behind Arlington National Cemetery, only a few miles from Hickory Hill, and my mother was a very personable young woman, and I was somewhat entrenched in some of this, but we'll get into that later, hopefully from a film or documentary standpoint that can come out to everybody. But I certainly got very entrenched in this before Evelyn Lincoln had passed, and then after Evelyn Lincoln had passed, and it really fell onto me in so many ways. The materials that Bobby Kennedy had kept, or the information of this to get to the American people on the assassination of his brother, and what that meant for the United States. These materials really fell to Evelyn Lincoln, who kept these materials to the detriment of herself, because she made a promise to Bobby Kennedy, and then it fell towards the end of her life to myself and Robert White. Now, I was called in to take on the more serious side of this. Robert White wanted to open up a museum, and that was his intention, but my intention was to get this out and to be able to breach this and broach this in a way that the information would actually make it out. Now, what it really fell to ultimately, and I had the support of different people like President Reagan and others, but what it really fell to JFK Jr. in the end to do this, and I really felt strongly that this country was going to take a dramatic turn at that point, and was really looking forward to being part of that. Unfortunately, I went to prison, and John was killed. Now, my heart broke all over this, and actually, I think about it every day of my life. I failed. We failed, and lives were lost, and including my mother and other people, my lawyer, and I was lucky to live through it. Prison probably saved my life. The fact that they had to debrief me to know who was involved and what was going on right before the Bush election, that probably saved my my existence. They did make an attempt to have me killed at one point. They thought it was easier to do that, and of course they thought, I almost succeeded in this, but it's a very long, long drawn out story. But I've had this guilt. I've had this terrible conscience about the fact that we did not get this out there, that we did not succeed. Somebody asked me in Los Angeles, they said, "Why didn't you write this book 20 years ago?" Without batting an eye, I said, "Because I was a coward." I said they had beat me down for years. They had put me through mental anguish. People had died, and I was broken in half. And I just wanted a chance to live. I just wanted to have a chance to have a family and to be normal and to have a life like everybody else does. And they really destroyed a lot of who I was as an individual before this happened. Then I realized I had my children. Once I had my children, I was lucky enough to get that chance. I thought, God, what am I leaving them? What world am I leaving them? I can't dishonor the people that perished, just like Robert Kennedy couldn't dishonor his brother that had died in the attempt to help this country. So I got to step up in '68. I got to stop this war, and I got to let the American people know that there's an agenda to take this country and destroy it. So just like all these people that have lost their lives to try to push off this evil that is, in my words, it's an evil agenda. I felt obligated to write this book and get it out there, at least to start the conversation. If people want to do their homework and they want to look into these things, I recommend it and I encourage it. And then more people can discuss it. We can maybe go from there and have a stronger platform to work from once that happens.
Well, Christopher, I do want to say that you are a true patriot. Anybody that has gone through what you have gone through in the quest to get this information out to the public, my hat's off to you, man. You have given the ultimate sacrifice. You've lost family. You've lost years of your life, and you're still fighting. You're still fighting today. And I'm just pleased to know you, pleased to have met you, and that book is just, your book is amazing. I have harped on the Kennedy assassination for years and then decades, and people say, who cares? It happened 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 40 years ago. It doesn't matter, but it does matter because that whole agenda is still in play. That was the agenda that he tried to stop, and they knew he was going to stop it. And that's why they assassinated him. That's why they assassinated his brother. And 40 years after that, that's why they went after you. So I just want to thank you for your patriotism and your diligence in trying to get this out.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. That the real heroes, of course, are not with us now. They gave everything. They gave all. But I survived. That's all I was trying to do, is survive, because I figured, well, if I can represent, I felt like I was representing the American people a little bit while I was going through this torture and loss, and that's what kept me going. I mean, there were moments where I thought I was going to end. I'd try to end my life if I could, but it gets that bad. But at the same time, you say, no, I've got to survive this to continue the possibility of maybe helping, and that spark keeps that fire alive in you and makes you angry enough to survive things you can't imagine having to go through. On the other side of that, of course, once you get out and you get to breathe freedom again that we all take for granted so much. And I had the children. God, now I realize more than ever I can't leave them a world. It's the same thing that John had said to me. I can't have my children growing up in a world in the United States that they can't recognize any longer. I have to do something. I have to make this choice. I have to make this decision. I'm compelled. And believe me, I understand that more than anybody. And that's the place I find myself in today. So if there's anything I can do, any question that I can answer, I'll try to do that to the best of my ability. There are some things I still have to hold back for the protection of my family and the Kennedy family, and of course and trying to do the best I can. If there's going to be a documentary or film come out, that would be the most help, because you're getting into the bigger audience. So like I say, I'll try to answer any questions that I can now.
Okay. Let's delve into the book. Before I ask my first question about the book, can you give us any kind of an update on the film or the documentary that you're working on? Is there any information that you can put out for us tonight?
At this stage, they've asked me not to, so I have to follow that directive. I've been told to stay silent as I can until something could be done in a positive way, and so that's the way it probably would happen. If we talk about it too much, it probably won't. So I have to respect that request.
Okay, understood. All right. One of the most fascinating parts of the book, and there are many, the whole thing is fascinating to me, but almost from the beginning, it caught me with the situation with Russia. The trip to Russia early on, you were a contractor in British Columbia and Vancouver, and you were working on construction. Can you go through that whole situation or that whole scenario where you were invited to Russia, how that came about, what you did while you were in Russia, and what took place there? I think that would be that's a good place we can start.
Well, there's information about that in the book, and of course, there's a lot more to this story on the back end of this, and I'm hoping will come forward. But I was trusted by the Russians because I had helped some of their high-end people come into Georgetown University, and I put up the bonds to get those students in there. And I was trusted. Not only trusted on that side, but trusted on the other side of the fence. And so I was very useful. And then of course they understood that I had inherited some of the key evidence in the Kennedy assassination. So therefore, when I'd gone over there, but the idea was that the Russian government had interest of doing business with the United States, and they wanted to use me. This was pre-Snowden, of course. They wanted to use me as a catalyst to help bridge those gaps a little bit and to open up business relations between Russia and the United States. And they wanted to give me access to the Oswald file, which they eventually did give to President Clinton. They wanted to give me access to that file and to encourage me to release information from Russia with the full backing of the Russian government to the American people of what happened to our president and and what the Russian response was, what their backstory was, and what they were trying to do with Bobby Kennedy, and what had actually happened, because they were certainly looking to help and to provide any information they could to prevent war. They certainly didn't want the Pentagon lobbing a missile over there, or they didn't want this thing to get out of hand. And they were trying to help resolve this. The KGB had done an investigation, so did the French government. But the United States didn't want any of their support, didn't want any of their help, and wanted to keep them as a Cold War enemy, which keeps their agenda going. And so, unfortunately, the whole thing got buried with a lot of this propaganda and false story.
Okay, and who did you meet with when you were in Russia? There was one particular.
My meeting
Yeah.
meeting took place in the Kremlin with General Alexander Levitt, who was going to be their front runner for the presidency of Russia. He was also the head of their intelligence over there, and took a meeting with him, and it was an interesting experience, to say the least.
Can you elaborate on any of that for us, or did you want to save it for people to read in the book, because that was just fascinating
Well,
to me?
some
Your
of it's in the
impressions.
book. I mean,
Yeah.
it's go ahead.
No, your impressions of that. I mean, uh, because it sounded like, based on what you wrote in the book, that was a complete surprise to you.
Well, I mean, some of it was, and some of it wasn't. But that we'll get into more of that hopefully later. But the fact of the matter is that you're meeting with somebody that has a control over their military in Russia and the control of the airports and their intelligence services, and you realize the power that person has. And we're having these discussions of the Russian side and my side, that they want to have access to discuss these things on a kind of a national security level in the Kremlin. Now that's a scary thing. I remember when I was over there, there was a siren that went off. I was in the Kremlin, and this tremendous air raid siren went off. And I thought, oh God, Jesus, the missiles are flying. I'm on the wrong side of the fence. And I called somebody over, and I said, what's the deal with this siren? And they said, well, that's there to scare the pigeons away. That's been there since a long time. And I said, no worries. I'm sitting there having a great heart attack, thinking that if you were at the White House and you had that air raid siren go off, Jesus, you'd fall over. But the fact of the matter is, I'd never heard that before, and I certainly thought that I was on the wrong side of the fence when that took place.
And was there a time, and I'm wondering if this was the time where the seriousness and the impact of what you were involved with, is that when it hit you, when you met with the Russians and you understood how serious this was still 40 years later?
Well, Russia, yes. Russia is a pretty serious place compared to the United States. At least it was at the time I was there. And you get a feeling that you're in a different world. And you've got young girls at the airport, 18, 19 years old, with machine guns that don't smile, et cetera, and you realize, geez, this is a pretty serious place. I asked my bodyguard that I was there with, I said, what happens if I were to do something to Lenin's tomb? What if I go up there and make a joke or something? He said the guard would shoot you, or he'd run you through with a bayonet. There wouldn't be a question asked about it. So you realize that it's a very different place, and it's intimidating. I mean, I was supposed to be a military officer through the Naval Academy, and I didn't go through that process, but I would have been a military officer. And it struck me that how ironic it was that I was here representing the United States and the Kremlin over this issue. And it was a little bit scary, but at the same time, it didn't pan out, and that gentleman was killed in a helicopter crash. I think he would have changed Russia for the better. He certainly had a lot of ideas, and he was the one that helped open up Russia and kept that power structure along those lines. So I think it was a positive outreach as far as that goes, which he had also outreached to Mr. Trump. And there was some positive messages going back and forth about that, and in the end, Mr. Trump didn't take that on, but there was some discussions about him as well. So people can read about that in the book.
Yes, and Alexander Lebed, you mentioned that he perished in a helicopter crash. Do you recall? I'm trying to recall myself right now about how long after your time that you met with him, from that time to the helicopter crash.
I don't recall specific. I know that he had met with Mr. Trump in New York. They had talked about different issues that probably had to do with where we are now. They were concerned about the Middle East and the CIA's interest in invading with the Bushes the Middle East, and they wanted to do what they could to open up relations and make it a better relationship, not such a cold relationship between Russia and the United States. I was encouraged by that idea, but I wasn't going to act out of turn or do something that I wasn't authorized specifically to do. And I did not take him up on that specific. Now, in retrospect, the way the American government treated me and throwing me in prison and putting me a 50-year prison sentence over my head and other people dying around me, I realized that the Russians had been trying to help. They were trying to give a support system to this whole subject so that it could get out and show the Russian side of this and what their position was. Now, Mr. Reagan, President Reagan, did not want that coming from a foreign government. He wanted it coming from inside the United States, resolve our problems domestically. He did not want it coming from a foreign government to say that the American government had lied to their people and it was being rubbed in our face by the Russian government. I respected that, and I declined that offer.
Just so we can make sure that we give a little bit of the timeline for our audience, you came into possession of some of these records and the information that was highly important as far as the assassination records. And that was 1995, is that correct?
I'd actually received '94 is when I first started receiving assassination evidence.
94. Okay. And then that time frame, I want to say, and forgive me, Christopher, I'm just going by memory here as we have our discussion, some things that I'd just like to highlight. And it was 96, 97, where we were looking at this becoming more of a spotlight for the government as far as you having possession of certain items as well as Robert White. Is that correct?
Yeah, the government certainly got wind of this after Evelyn Lincoln's passing. It was not only the Americans, but the Russian side was also made aware of this right away. CIA was actually in CIA brief to the president. But the fact of the matter is the Clintons had invited me to discuss this at the White House along with Robert White. I turned that down. In retrospect, that might have been a bad decision, but I didn't want to go discuss this and put myself on record about it yet. And but it was very aware, and it seemed to me that the government didn't care at that time that we had this or what we were going to do. It had been buried for so long, and they didn't actually know what we had. They wanted to know, but they didn't know. It had been kept buried. So instead of going to the White House and discussing this openly, I wanted to get my feet under me and talk to Secret Service agent Robert Bauch. I was asked to talk to him about this before I made any final moves. Mr. Bauch was responsible for President Kennedy's protection in the White House and was the one who put the recordings in place for the president to keep everybody on record in 62 and 63, so Kennedy wouldn't look bad when the shit hit the fan. So that was what his job was, and of course I was supposed to meet with him and talk with him, which I did. And then I realized we were in a kind of a pickle, and the best thing to do was to try to get this back to the Kennedy family, which I started to do that in '96. It did not reach to fruition with John until '98. And unfortunately, I went to prison in August of '98, and John died just after in '99.
And the time that you went to Russia and had this impromptu meeting with Lebed was around March or April of 1997. Does that sound about right as far as the timeline?
Well, some of the dates in there have been manipulated somewhat to get the story compressed and get it out. Yeah.
Okay. I'm speculating a little bit here, but just with the timeline, I'm curious about the Clinton involvement or what you felt like maybe got you on the radar with Russia, with Lebed attending the inauguration for Clinton that year. He's the only Russian politician, I believe, that was invited to attend the inauguration in January of '97, and also he was set to succeed Yeltsin.
That's right. He was the front runner, and the whole idea was that he was going to be president and going to change the Russian government system a bit, get rid of the corruption, open up trade with the West, and change things up. Now, this, under my understanding, was not in the interest of the CIA. It was they wanted to continue to use Russia as a scapegoat for an anti-democracy position around the world. So you've got things that are rubbing against each other in different coordinations here. But yes, he was the front runner, and the U.S. had figured that he was going to be the gentleman that was going to ascend to the presidency there.
Okay.
You think you got on the radar a little bit because of the attendance to the Clinton inauguration?
You mean by the Justice Department or the agencies having pictures of me in the Kremlin sitting at Yeltsin's seat? Probably.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, they had photographs of me there, so yes, they knew about that.
That's another way of saying you were famous, right?
I was infamous, and I certainly made the 10 most wanted list for a while, which is another interesting thing to be on. Of course, they said they made a mistake about that to the Canadians. They said, well, that wasn't a mistake; that was done for purpose.
Okay. Now you mentioned while we're still on the Russia subject, and then we'll move on. You mentioned in the book about them questioning you about Russia, whether you were a Russian spy or going down that road. Do you feel like that was just a ruse, or do you think they?
Well,
really...
they want to find out. They want to find out who I'm working for, because they know if I was they want to. if I'd been working for the agency in Russia, they would have killed me.
Right.
They wouldn't have talked to me the way they did. Okay, so it's they wanted to figure out who I may have been working with and working for, and they were trying to use whatever angle they could to get me to speak about that. Now, when I had signed my agreements with the Justice Department, I had to I got protection for my family, but at the same time, I couldn't lie. I had to answer any questions that they posed to me, and then it was going to be vetted by CIA and FBI. And if I didn't answer correctly, they could hold that against me and give me 50 years in prison. So I had to. It was a very, very stressful debrief for me that had military intelligence people and of course Clinton's people were there too. So it was a very, very, very stressful debrief.
And you were not allowed to have your attorney present for that. Is that correct?
No attorney present. No constitutional rights for me whatsoever. I had to sign all those away and had to sign an agreement with justice saying that I agreed to this deal. And I couldn't even speak when I got sentenced. Couldn't open my mouth. And now the judge did get wind of the dirt in this case, which I wasn't aware of until later, and asked me to speak. I refused to speak because I didn't want to break the deal. But I tell you, there were some very big attorneys there shaking like a leaf in the courtroom. It's a very interesting process. And I was pretty shaky too, because I was advised that that no matter what the agreement with justice was, that federal judge could give me 50 years in prison that day, period. And my life was taken. It was gone. There's no way to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very, very serious moment for me. But I did make the decision not to speak and to uphold my agreement with the Justice Department. And then to the judge's credit, she did give me a little bit more of a leniency than that was a good thing, and also had filed some lawsuits involved on my behalf once she realized that she had been kind of hoodwinked on this as well.
Right. Okay. And I know everybody wants to hear about this, so I'll get right to this. You had a meeting, and this is you can tell us kind of the story about the watch. Maybe this is time where you can tell the story about the watch and how you eventually that took you to Miami Beach in a meeting with John Jr.
Some of the materials that President Kennedy was wearing in Dallas, they were withheld from him by Johnson's Secret Service. One of the things that went by that process was a wristwatch that happened to be in Jackie's purse. Now, that was a Cartier watch that she had given him on their anniversary, and she just happened to have it with her. So for that particular day, he wanted to keep a tight schedule, and they were running late, and he threw the watch on as he normally would, way up on his arm under his cuff. They didn't know this. They didn't plan on this, and when President Kennedy was assassinated, that watch was very close to the frontal headshot that killed him. It had munitions evidence on it. It had other evidence on it. It had impact evidence on the crystal itself that could directionalize the round that hit him, and other evidence on that. So Bobby Kennedy scooped that piece up very quickly when he found out about this being in Dallas, that it was left at Parkland Hospital. They had a bullet that was there, and they had a watch that was there. The bullet was scarfed up by the same person, and the same person that had the watch in Parkland. They used the bullet to sell everybody on this idea of this, magic bullet theory and whatever other garbage that they want to invent to the American public. Now, the watch was whisked away to Bobby Kennedy for his investigation, and he had actually used it to threaten Lyndon Johnson at one point. But the watch was put through forensics for him, along with some other things that were withheld that day, and he realized that Lyndon Johnson had been complicit in this, at very least complicit in the understanding that his brother was going to be assassinated that day, and come to find out that it was a little more than that. But Bobby Kennedy was trapped. They had to pigeonhole Bobby Kennedy. It was very important that they did that, and that's exactly what they did. And while he was grieving for his brother and doing all these other things he was having to do, the main course was to keep us out of war with Russia. So he spent his time doing that. Meanwhile, Oswald was killed, and there'd be no trial. So Lyndon Johnson had sucked up to Bobby Kennedy, offered him the VP spot. He didn't take that. Then he finally gave him the senatorship out of New York with the CFR to keep him under wraps. And Bobby Kennedy took that because he thought it would be a window for him to take a step to the presidency. But the watch itself was a very important piece of assassination evidence that was telling on multiple counts, and was going to be used to discuss this with the American public when the time was right, once Bobby Kennedy had ascended to the White House. Unfortunately, he did not get there, and he instructed Evan Lincoln to keep all these pieces of material that he had put together in case he didn't make it, for the protection of the rest of the Kennedy family. And that has continued for many decades.
And this watch, Christopher, just to clarify the special significance of this watch for me in particular, this was a watch that that President Kennedy had not worn his entire time in office. Correct? This was a gift from Jackie on their 4th wedding anniversary. Is that correct? And he had only worn that during his Senate time. Does that sound right?
That's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct. He'd stopped wearing it as he ascended the presidency and took it off, and had worn a watch that was given to him by Grant Stockdale, which was a square omega. People mistake that for a tank. It's a square omega watch, and he wore that consistently. But then that particular one day, he threw this on because all these items were withheld from him, and the watch suffered many things. One of it had a clasp on it, which is called a deployant clasp, and it's kind of like a buckle. You can imagine a buckle that snaps. The impact of that round when it hit him and exploded with such a force, it pushed Jackie's mouth open. If you ever look at photographs of the assassination, which is horrific, and it's horrific that you would kill a husband with his wife in the back of the car while his kids are sitting back there waiting for him to return home. It's disgusting. But the fact of the matter is, Jackie's mouth isn't open in a reaction to the shot. It's blown open from the impact of that round. The clasp on the watch was blown apart and was hanging loose on his wrist when he came into Parkland Hospital. A nurse had actually removed it because it was hanging down off his wrist. The crystal was shattered. It had 4 different striations of shatter to it. The direction binded the impact of the round. It was a sonic wave, and if you really study the films of this from the other side of the limousine, you can actually see the shock wave hit the grass and go across the grass as this thing exploded. Of course, they've taken out the spray that goes up in the air. They've taken out the massive wound in the back of his head. The motorcycle police officer Hargis that had been hit with brain matter and tissue, that was part of a secret investigation that took place after the assassination, where they were trying to get the materials from him so that they could analyze that for Bobby Kennedy's investigation as well. Hargis came back and said, Jesus, unless you do this through court action and subpoena me, I'm not giving this up. I'm not going to be caught in the middle of this and get myself killed. So he still has, or his sister still has that material to this day. But this is a known entity. The people that were in part of this investigation, this is a known entity. People like Robert Bauch, who was in the Secret Service, they understood that this had taken place, and they understood that their national security interests, along with the CIA, was such that they couldn't lose 2 presidents within a week, and they had to cover this. And that's exactly what they did.
It's an amazing. It gives me chills. But as far as the watch goes, with this day having to play out the way it did, it almost seems like it was destiny for Jackie to have that watch with her on that day.
It was something they didn't expect. It's something they didn't count on. It was something that allowed a quick understanding of the fact that it was a conspiracy and not a single shooter. And of course, Bobby Kennedy knew the name Oswald. Oswald was not an unknown entity to him. And Oswald has been totally brutalized in our history books. And it's not correct information. None of it's correct information. We've been lied to from the beginning on this, and they succeeded in changing the policies of the United States and diverting us into a different direction. And this has continued through the Gulf of Tonkin, through the Nixon impeachment, which was a CIA operation to get him out of there before he opened his mouth. The on and on it goes. Right now, I'd like to get into just for a second where we are right now, because if you think about this, we used to have soldiers that would go to war and fight a war abroad, like in Vietnam, and that was somewhat expected that you were in the military, and that was something that was acceptable. Then it gets into a situation where the President of the United States, the chief executive, his head is blown open in broad daylight. And then that's not covered properly, and that's not addressed. Then you've got things that go on closer to the present day. We have 9/11 that takes place, and there's no disclosure to the American people of the truth on that, because God, if it were to get out, they'd lynch everybody. That was something that was known for a decade or so in advance. It's not something that happened instantly. And the fact of the matter is, this continues. And then you get into the fact that you have children being shot at schools. Now the children aren't safe. Now where's the agenda go down? Now you've got this same individuals, the same people that are involved in all these agendas, have basically declared war on every citizen of the world. Each one of us has now become a bioweapon to be restricted and monitored, to be plugged into this AI system so that we can outflank the Russians and the Chinese and so forth and so on, and that we can get booted up into this new system. If you don't get booted up into the new system, you're going to become a third-class citizen and forced into this agenda. And the American people are not, again, being told, don't have an open debate, don't have a part in this decision-making process. These decisions have to do with our humanity. They have to do with our morality. They have to do with who we are as citizens of the world. And we don't get any choice in this. And this is horrific. And the people of the United States and people of the world need to understand this, so that you're not fighting each other, because that's what they want you to do. You need to understand where this is coming from. And that's why the Kennedy assassination still matters. That's why the foundations of this still matters. And hell, you can go back to World War II and the compromises that took place there, and the blackmail that took place there, that put Kennedy in the position he was in. Hell, Eisenhower got compromised the hell out of by the CIA in this agenda against Russia, and then told this young president that came in, don't let him get us into World War III. Do everything you can to stop this. This young man that has to now put all this weight has to be put onto his shoulders. And it continues, and it continues, and the car is broken, and we keep running the damn thing, and we haven't fixed the problem. We're going to patch it, lie to the American people, lie to the people of the world, and keep this thing going. And they say believe in the science. The science is a lie. They're not telling us the truth. The science is manipulated. So how are you going to believe in science when it's manipulated? They say, trust us. We're going to give you the correct information on body counts and so forth and so on. How do you trust these individuals that had all these other agendas? Have you trusted them so far? You're going to trust them now? You're going to put this injection that cannot be properly safety checked in any capacity. You're going to put that into your children? Are you going to be the holdout where you're going to become a second, third-class citizen and be forced into poverty and destruction, so that because you want to do the right thing by your family? These are serious, serious issues that need to be discussed, and they need to be discussed by the populace of the United States and the populace of the world, not be made by these technocrats that have not been elected, or bureaucrats that have been paid off.
I couldn't agree with you more on everything that you just brought up, and in particular, when you referenced the science. And I'm not going to get on my soapbox here. We have goal to reach tonight within a certain period of time, but I am amazed on a daily basis how we've decided to throw years and years of science away to address this current situation we're in, with protections that have been proven to not work. So now is absolutely the time for people to stand up and do their part in making sure that they retain their liberties and grasp their freedoms and cherish those every day, every minute of your lives, and understand why our history in this country is so important, so we don't continue to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And I do feel that the keystone for where we are today and where we can possibly wind up is everything to do with with what we're talking about tonight. So I'm
getting
sure
more
that
truth you're getting more truth out of Russia than you're getting from your own government. They're there to protect you. They're there to take care of the American people. That's what they're there for. You're getting more information, more direct information out of Russia that's being told that you're getting conspiracy theories. The Russian controlled television is telling you the truth. They're getting rid of Microsoft in Russia. They're saying that they're banning, the FSB has put Bill Gates on a watch list. They're saying Robert Kennedy Jr. is telling you the truth, and you need to listen to him. And this is the truth. This is what the truth is. They've got one of the best intelligence services in the world in Russia. Okay, and so you need to start paying attention, because what you're getting here is 100% propaganda. It is 100% controlled media. The only truth you're going to get in the United States is by a show like this or something else, where people are trying to bring their own personal stories forward at great peril sometimes to alert the American public. And that's a job, responsibility of every citizen to take that responsibility and to do that and bring that upon themselves. But these media individuals are lying. These medical professionals are lying. I've been there. I've sat with these high up Justice Department people and watched them lie right in front of me. It's shocking how blatant they are about it, and how insane the whole process is. But when you sit there and you watch it personally and you go through that process, you can never go back. You can never erase that idea, especially when your life is on the line and you understand the significance of it. Now that's going to be everybody is going to be affected that way. You will all been these frogs in the boiling water long enough, and now people have to take responsibility for themselves, for the family, for their own family, for the country itself, for democracy, and for freedom around the world. These are issues that can no longer be put aside.
you're getting a lot of support in the chat, Christopher. I know you can't see the chat right now, but your words are having a great impact on all of our viewers right now. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you speaking out on our current issues.
In my humble opinion, we have been war has been declared on every one of us, and yet we have no slogan. We have no defense. We're just people like everybody else, trying to live life, a decent life, a loving life, raising our children and everything else. But war has been declared on us, and we're supposed to trust these individuals to make the decisions for us. We can no longer trust these people. We can no longer allow this system to destroy what's left of us, our democracy, the freedoms that have been fought for and died to get us to where we are. Once that gets too far further down the road, it's too late. It's too late by that juncture, and all you can do then say, I wish we had done, or God, if we had known what we know now. Hell, I heard about this stuff that we're going through now when I was in prison in '98 by somebody who had hacked into the intelligence services network and was listening to everything that was being said, for the White House communications, to NSA, to everybody else. He knew all this back then. So don't act like this is a new agenda for people. It isn't. Believe me, you're just waking up to this idea. You're just experiencing it for the first time, and it's not going to get better. It's going to get tougher. It's going to get worse. And as we continue down this process, it's going to be hard to back up. The time to do something is now. We have a group of people that are called the Special Forces of the United States. These people are trained professionals, and they are by Constitution and by oath responsible for protecting us domestically. If they're given the order, they will act on the Constitution, and they will protect our interests from people that are traitors to this country. Give the order. Somebody give the order, because before it gets too late. I don't want to see millions of Americans kill each other. I don't blame other Americans for having ideas that are different from mine or experiences different from mine, because that's just the way we are. We all have different experiences, but the fact of the matter is that there are certain truths. You can't wait for everybody to catch up to those truths by the time it's too late. So I'm going to do my best right now to speak the truth from my perspective. And my perspective is we're in this now. We didn't start this. This is being perpetrated against us. We have to take action. It's not up to the President of the United States. He can't do it alone. He cannot, believe me. He can't. They can threaten him like they can threaten anybody else. They can have indictments on him and his family like they have on anybody else. It's up to the people of the United States and the world. And believe me, the rest of the world is looking to us right now. Reagan used to say to me, if the light goes out in this country, it goes out around the world. They're looking to us to stand up and be Americans, to do what we're proud of, what we celebrate every 4th of July, to stand up and protect the rest of the world. Because if we fall, they fall. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of going to bed every night worried to death about my children and their future and the future of everybody else's children. I don't want to leave them this mess. And I don't mind technology being I don't mind technology being put forward to benefit the humanity. There's nothing wrong with progress. Nothing wrong with that at all. But these technocrats have it the other way, that we're there to support technology, that technology is going to replace God, that the answers are going to come from technology. They're going to mandate what we do. You're going to have to ask an AI system, a computer system, whether you can go abroad, whether you can buy this goods, whether you can. I don't want to live in that world. This technology should be assisting us, not controlling us. They've been dreaming of this central control for years. For years, it is a wet dream of these people. They're psychopaths. They have nothing that they can bring to the table in life other than control, and that's what they're good at. And they're trying to get us there. And believe me, this plan is one of the best things I've ever seen. It is encompassing. It is multifaceted. Any way you turn, you lose. They've got AI systems working on this right now, thinking in real time in chess moves that humans haven't even thought of yet. I don't want to compete against this because it's almost an impossibility. But we have one thing on our side, and that's the numbers. We have the numbers all day. These very small few people who want to control us and continue to betray us and steal from us and lie to us, if we step up in unison, there is nothing they can do. But we continue to fight each other. We continue to feel that we are inferior, that we are going to have to follow whatever they say, whatever they mandate. They say, oh, geez, so the Constitution or the Supreme Court made this ruling, so therefore they made a ruling on somebody back in the flu in 1905 that had to do with a $5 fine, not the population of the world being shot with some with a non-tested thing that may shorten our lives or make us sterile, so they can bring the population down in the United States or project this into our children. These are not the issues they made in 1905, so I don't even want to hear that, Mr. Dershowitz. I don't want to hear it. You're a controlled individual. You're intelligent. You speak well, so do a lot of your representatives on this level. But that doesn't mean you're right. So I don't want you out there as a spokesperson listening to Mr. Dershowitz saying, well, if the government decides to mandate this, they're going to mandate it. And then we're all going to have to file into the oven and just hope for the best. I don't agree with that. I think that our problems are man-made and we can step up and change them. But we have to have an agreement between ourselves and we have to have an open discussion.
Well, Christopher, I couldn't agree more with everything you said. I think while they create the paradigm, the left-right paradigm, conservative versus liberal, black versus white, Christian versus Catholic, all these various things that they create for us are just distractions so that we don't unite and push back on their agenda. And it's way past time that we do that. How much of this do you think JFK knew back in 1962 and 63?
Tremendous amount. JFK was ONI, brought in by our first defense secretary, Mr. Forrestal. They killed Forrestal because he wasn't going along with this blackmail agenda out of World War II. JFK used to visit his grave. On his grave, I think it says something to the fact he died in the efforts for a better government. And when Kennedy was killed, they took him into Bethesda, the same damn place where they killed Forrestal. They put Bobby Kennedy and Jackie on the floor, I think right above it or right below it, to give them the idea to say, listen, we got you. We've checkmated you on this. They're good. They've been good people that have sacrificed and have said no to this and have lost their lives. And I can't disrespect the people that I've been with that have worked in this capacity any longer. That's why I wrote the book, and I wrote the book to get a discussion as we're having now. I think JFK understood this very, very well. And he said in his speeches that secrecy was going to be used to further this agenda, which it has. And when you make peace impossible, you make war inevitable. Now, the war they talk about is now upon us. It is not on a foreign soil country somewhere. It is here. And we have to say to ourselves, no, we're not going to be blinded by this agenda, this live exercise, which always takes place when 9/11 happened, same thing. And they're going to see how many people capitulate, where the numbers are. They're going to have to mandate. They're going to be able to make this open-ended, so they're going to get the numbers anyway. We have to bind together and force back and say, no, we've had enough. You want to give us real answers, we're open to that idea, but if you're not going to give us the real answers, then we're not going to capitulate to this. Bottom line, that's it. We've had enough of this. This isn't going to work this way any longer. Stop this black and white problem and stuff. There is no black and white problem if you don't talk about it and force it down our throat for the media every other day. I don't have a problem with anybody. I don't know about you guys.
Amen.
But I want everybody to have a life and have a chance at the best that they can be. That's what this country was founded on. That's why people from all over the world want to come here. But you know what's happening now? You're having people leave the United States.
Yes.
They're getting up and selling and getting out. They're scared. They're worried. Where do you think they're going to go? You think they're going to go somewhere else that's going to be better? This country goes, it all goes. It's not going to be any better anywhere else. If we don't stand now and stand here, we lose the ball game. It's over. And like I said, I don't mind AI. I'm not against technology specific, but I want that to be kept in perspective. Technology supports humanity, not the other way around.
And this is something that has been, they've been wreaking havoc on the American people and the world, really, for decades upon decades upon decades. And the inmate that you mentioned that had information on this because he hacked into the information, the government information that talked about what we're going through right now, also gave you insight in particular on 9/11. Is that correct? Same inmate?
I knew about 9/11. Yeah, I knew about 9/11 even before I went to prison. That's not in the book. And so did some other people. And there was good people that wanted that to stop, didn't want that to happen, that were against this idea. But this military and complex, the secrecy, the power, the covering up of our losses of money that's been stolen all over the world, it's gotten way out of hand. It's gotten to the end of the car is tired. We can't keep patching this any longer. We may have to reinvent the way it works. We may have to re-energize the Constitution for where we are now, but it certainly has to be done by the people of the United States and the people of the world, not by these technocrats or bureaucrats. These people have got their enslavement agenda already ready, and you better look around, because the people that you see in power, they want their families in power for life. There's not going to be any more elections. There's not going to be any more democracy. They want to have their families as royals all over the world that are going to enslave the rest of us. I'm not acceptable to that idea. I hope you guys aren't either.
No, I'm not on board with that either.
I'm not either. And if we fight about this now and we say, listen, do we have a consensus about this? It comes down to a simple thing. Do you want your children to be slaves, to have a limited life, to have a limited capacity? Or do you want them to have the God-given abilities to rise to whatever level their abilities take them, and to be free and independent? If you could answer in the latter, then there's our union. We can resolve any of these other issues later on, but geez, that's the bottom line, isn't it? Because that's where we're headed. That's where we're going. Ultimately, that's where it takes us at the end of the day.
Christopher, how do you think we break through to the people now? Because they're so far down the road, you know, they're they're so far down the road on all their media and their Twitter and their Facebook, and they're so concerned about all these different things and getting likes and getting followers from people that they don't even know and they will never meet. And this is, of course, by design. We have the GMO food, we've got the vaccinations, we've got all these things that are we have been attacked on several fronts. How do we get through to these people? It's been frustrating to me because I've known about this for almost my whole life, ever since JFK. I mean, I was in second grade. I followed that through. I never believed that one person could kill our president all by themselves. And over the years, that's been proven by all the information that's come out. That's confirmed by your book. And so, how do we break through to these people? Because you're talking to one person that's been trying to do that since November 22nd in 1963.
Well, this was the idea that we discussed with the film people, and what we concluded was the idea that if you could take Americans on a journey, on my journey, for example, and let them experience that by film, as if they were experiencing it, as every American would be experiencing, go through that it would open up a dialogue, that it would open up a conversation, it would open up emotions. And that has the ability to change things when you have an open dialogue, and you're certainly not putting blame on people or you're loving them. You're telling them, listen, we care about you, we love you, we want to have an open discussion about this. I don't mind different opinions. I encourage different opinions. In any democracy, that's what you have. That's an encouraging aspect of it, and I welcome it. But what I don't welcome is to be lied to and manipulated like we have been through our press, and that's why the First Amendment is so damned important. But we have been totally blindsided and lied to by these corporations and individuals. And if you could take the populace on this journey and say, listen, this took place, do your homework, understand that there were people that loved you, that sacrificed their life for you, even recently, that this has been happening, that maybe we can all stand together. Maybe we can make a change now and stop being scared, stop being feeling like we have no power, no control. That's an illusion. That's a lie that's been perpetrated by the people that have very small numbers. These 1% people that decide that they can control us by our software. Jesus, Bill Gates was given that information from military intelligence. All that, the internet that you see was a military application. Bill Gates didn't come out of nowhere. These people didn't rise to the great American dream that you think they did. This is a planned agenda. This has been ongoing. Now they turn the switch and say jump or fall off the cliff, and everybody's lined up to fall off the cliff. I don't blame them for that. They've been brainwashed into this. I feel bad for them. I want to help. I want to unionize us in this idea that we have been lied to and manipulated, and to find a common ground. And that common ground is what I said before. Do you want your children to be an enslaved populace, to be non-thinking, to rely on AI to tell them what to do? Or do you want AI to be part of a life that would encourage a foundation for them to rise to the level of what they're capable of as human beings? It's a vastly different future that we're talking about now. We're at a very important crossroad. And the choice that we make will determine the future of humanity for the rest of the time. You know, when they went to the UN and then they initiated that, the idea was to stop war. And that was a good idea. Let's stop this war and get rid of these weapons. We don't need all of this. Let's de-weaponize and get some intelligence on this and some so that we can live in peace. This was Kennedy's idea. But now they've weaponized the UN to say, fine, we don't forget the war. We'll do it without firing a shot. We'll take over and control everybody by manipulation and by lies and deceit and decades of propaganda. When we watch films out of Hollywood, we watch television, we watch that, they are implanting ideas over and over into our head. And it's not subliminal, like, it's not a joke. We're living in a very fake and false world. And we need to get back to some foundations of reality, or we're going to pay a very high price for this. But I think what the question that you answered is the key question. Is how do you get the rest of America and the world to unite on this idea so that we don't have to go down this path? And that's something we should talk about and debate, and we should have an open forum on exactly that with our best and brightest. Hell, they got the slickest and best and brightest out there talking this agenda up. So that makes you feel, well, they know what they're talking about, or he knows what he's saying. And then they put fringe lunatics on the other side of the fence that makes it look like you're out of your mind. You're rewarded for the behavior they want. You're punished for the behavior that you feel like you're taking a side for yourself or for your family, for your country. I'm tired of that. It's a lie. It's not true. And so the debate needs to start, and needs to start now. We've got some serious problems. The ship is sinking. We need to figure out how we're going to support that ship and how we're going to get to where we want to go. Let that foundation begin. Let that conversation begin. Let's get organized about that idea. Let's start talking about that proposal. Let's know where the enemy lies, where the foundations are crumbling truly. God, I don't have to know the policy of the Governor Newsom out of Los Angeles. I can see the repercussions of his decisions. I know his decisions are not good and have an agenda because of what's happening in California. You can see it all around you, or anywhere else that you want to point to. It's time to cut to the chase on this. People want to live a life. They want to live a decent life, and if we all stand together, we could do that.
I agree, and I think one of the ways that that really this is not targeted towards our viewers per se, but our viewers all have friends, all have family. We all have people in our lives who are blind, not only to what is happening current day, but what led us here. We have so many people in our lives, or people that we touch, throughout our day, that don't understand the amount of lies and corruption and deception that we've suffered through at the hands of our own government.
Let me address that. This is very important. There's a reason Diana, Princess of Wales, is dead. There's a reason that JFK Jr. is dead. There's a reason these individuals aren't here, because if they got up onto a podium and spoke to the people of the world, whether it be the Great Britain or the United States, there's no debate. As soon as they opened their mouth, people understood it to be the truth, and then the system would change, and everything else would follow. That's why they're not here. Everything now is let's check the fact checks. We don't believe this. He's lied 100,000 times. The president never opens his mouth. He doesn't lie. Blah, blah, blah. So now you don't believe anything. Where do you get the truth from? Who do you trust? They've made it so you can't trust any individual. There's no one statement that stands above the others as factual and true. And this is part of the problem. And this is why these individuals that had integrity, that had the respect of the populace, are not there anymore. You have to think through it logically.
I agree with that. And what I wanted to, if you don't mind, Christopher, I'd like to just read a short excerpt of your book in regards to just a small portion of of what we're trying to talk about right now and the message that we're trying to send. Would that be all right with you if I just read a little bit from the book? And I have a follow-up question for that. Okay. We have some information here just to set the scene. This would be a conversation that you had with an inmate that you developed a very strong relationship with during your time in prison. And this would be the inmate speaking to you in regards to their inside information in regards to your case. And that is CIA Dispatch 1035-960 has been in full effect since '67 to discredit and mislead the American public regarding the assassination through the media. But American law is clear. The state of Texas owes the citizens of the United States a murder trial for the death of President John F. Kennedy. It would have been easy for John Jr. to file a case with the evidence withheld by Bobby Kennedy that you sold him and the Secret Service documents you gave him. A grand jury would have convened immediately. It would have been the beginning of the undoing of our current government. And I'd like to just touch on that with the information that you're bringing forward to the American public through your book, and the vital information, the vital idea behind the information, and what it screams to us as the American public is that we have been lied to through the administration since Kennedy was in office. We've been lied to with the Warren Commission that was set up to as an illusion, really, to quote investigate the Kennedy assassination records, for the Assassination Review Board that was put in place, and for Johnson in particular that took office after Kennedy, and every administration since. This same individual, who was an attorney, I might add, who was framed with trumped up charges just as you were, which is why he found himself in prison. He indicated that if this could be validated by the American public, that we would essentially have a case to reverse every administration, every executive order, everything that came into law for all the administrations following Kennedy. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, some insight on that.
Let me say two things about that. The gentleman you're quoting is an American hero, in my opinion, and is also connected internationally. He's a Secret Service agent. And I did put that in the book because basically his job, unofficially, was to guard JFK Jr. in New York. His operations were to, his primary operation was to guard VIPs at a JFK airport. But he failed just as I failed. And it was strange that they put us both in that little place in Loretto, which is there, designated there for different individuals out of Washington, and they can have families come up, that kind of thing, and they keep an eye on them very closely. But he felt just a sense of loss as I did when he found out that John had died and we'd both been in prison. That was on purpose. Let me say this. George Bush could not get elected to a superintendent of schools. Reagan was used to bring him in as VP to get him into the White House. Reagan was supposed to die. The bullet did not explode in Reagan. He almost died. He came close. If they had not gone immediately to the hospital with the Secret Service, he would have been dead. Bush had taken over that position in the White House for Reagan while he was recovering and never gave it back. Once Bush was in the White House, we have had a CIA agenda in the executive branch until Trump has come in. Let me repeat that. Every president that has been in the executive mansion has been CIA directed, controlled, working with the Central Intelligence Agency until Trump. That's how far we've gone down this path. That's how far we've been deceived. That's how far we've been misled. We have decades of damage on our record all over the world. Not only hurting the United States, but hurting other countries in the world, fighting other people's wars, being drained of our finances and our resources, making other individuals ultra wealthy, ultra powerful, non-prosecutable in any federal court or any court of law. When I was arrested and I had to deal with the Justice Department, there was orders that came from the White House that directed the Justice Department that no prosecutions were foreseeable in the Kennedy murder, so they were not to follow up on any evidence that was presented or classified. The whole ARRB that came into effect, that whole purpose of what George Bush had put into effect and Clinton had put into actual use, was there to gather information by subpoena power around the world and classify the information that came in that was going to turn the tide on the American people knowing what happened to the president. Our information was confiscated by the FBI and classified, and the American people will no longer have access to see that. I've looked at documents in my hand that was the second autopsy, the one they said that was burned, the second one. I've seen the original notes that were Bobby Kennedy's on that autopsy and what had actually happened to the president. That was Bobby Kennedy's copy, who now has been classified away. I've actually seen the document that the CIA took that was filed 4 days after the assassination that declared Lyndon Johnson complicit and asked for a provisional government of the United States immediately, filed 4 days after the assassination. It was filed with the Attorney General. The Attorney General was brought into the White House. Lyndon Johnson talked to him in the very pool where Kennedy used to swim. They all came to the conclusion that there was no conspiracy. The CIA had to pull that document, and the American people never got a chance to see it.
Do you know who
I believe the American people are owed an explanation. I believe the American people are owed an apology. I believe the American people deserve much better than they've been getting for the last decade after decade of lies and deceit. And I think the American people need to wake up to this idea. If you don't believe me, look around at where we are as a country. Look at the division. We're on the loom of civil war in the United States. We've got a lot of scared, very concerned individuals. People lost their jobs. Those jobs are not coming back. They don't want the jobs coming back. They want to replace it with AI technology. They don't want you there. They don't want you driving trucks across the country. As soon as they can get you out of there, they got trucks that will drive themselves. What do they need you for? They've already got the stores lined up that will distribute across the United States. Those big box stores, the rest of everybody else that's independent, they're going to be squashed, destroyed. The American spirit itself will be squashed and destroyed. This is what the American people need to be having an open discussion about.
Do you think we have any hope in Trump? Can Trump help?
The presidency has been limited and continues to be limited. When Trump goes to a meeting, most of the time that they look to the CIA for where the country's headed and where the directives are going to come from. They know that the president comes and goes. 4 years, he's out, maybe 8 years. But eventually the CIA agendas are going to be fulfilled. Now, they have been continued to be fulfilled, whether that be Obama or Clinton or the Bushes. Hell, the CIA never would tell the president any damn thing because they was always afraid that the plausible deniability, or they want it, or that's what they say, but really they don't want to be told no. So they don't tell him any damn thing. Once they got the people in the executive office that are CIA personnel, trained by the CIA, hell, they had a free carte blanche all over the world. They could do any damn thing they wanted. And that's what they did. And we've been paying the damn bill. I don't know about you. They haven't been acting in my name.
No.
And I would think that the majority of the American people would agree with that. President Kennedy hated the Central Intelligence Agency. They lied to him. They made him look like a fool. He wanted the agents that were bad, that came out of the OSS, that were all over the world, that would not disband. He wanted them out. He wanted them gone. He wanted to crush the CIA. And Bobby Kennedy felt the same way. He hated the CIA. The CIA hated him. Hated each other with a passion because there's a different sense of morality, a different sense of where the direction was going to be. Bobby Kennedy cared about people. President Kennedy cared about people. He even said, if you want a president that's going to be a head of a fraternal organization, you got the wrong president. I care about the Constitution. I care about the people of the United States. I care about the world. If you don't want a president acting in that capacity, you've got the wrong guy. Hell, when Bay of Pigs took place, and then CIA lied to President Kennedy, bold-faced lied to him, made him look bad, and those people died on those beaches. He cried in the White House. He cried. He called his father up, and he said, "Dad, what do I do?" He said, "Buck up." He was gonna resign. He felt so responsible for those men that had died on that beach, betrayed. That's a president, somebody who cares, somebody who's there for your best interests.
Why don't you speak?
These bureaucrats got to go. They have to go. These agendas have got to go. These foreign countries that have been slushing these money to these guys have got to go. Our system has to be revamped. It's got to change. And they know it. They know it's at the very end of the cycle. They're holding on by a thread. They know this. They've got to get the American people and the world under this AI control to keep the power. Don't let it happen. Don't let it happen. You think these people deserve this? This is our best and brightest? Don't let these people stay in a position of power over your family and the rest of the world. That's insane. We are owed better than that. We are better than that.
They're all paid off, compromised, and blackmailed, Christopher. That's the problem.
You're damn right. You're damn right they are. And Epstein was part of that process. Hell, I've seen guys like that come into prison before, and they work for agencies and everything else, and they do their job, and they get paid a lot of money and perks, and then they compromise the hell out of everybody.
Yep.
And you have weaknesses. That's what they go for. Those weaknesses is what they go for. And now they're going after us, our weaknesses. They're turning the table of what they are. They're saying we're racist. They're racist. They're saying we're bad people and Americans are bad people. They're bad people. We didn't act. We're acting on their orders and their directives. We didn't order women and children to be murdered in Vietnam.
Or Iraq.
That was Lyndon Johnson. That was President Bush, who laughs about that as our men and women are being slaughtered. It's not a joke. And if he's listening to this, I hope he hears this broadcast.
Can you speak a little bit about what Bobby did to prevent World War III?
Bobby Kennedy was the backdoor connection, and he'd already established to help with the different crises that were going on during the missile crisis. He'd already established a channel to the Kremlin. So did President Kennedy, direct channel. This outraged the CIA and the military and establishment. They were using individuals with helping with these national security concerns, which was a big no-no, and really outraged the community. God, when Kennedy made his peace speech at the university, it just sent chills through the intelligence community when he talked about de-escalating with Russia, with the UN, and he said we're going to bring all these weapons out of and destroy them, get rid of them. God, it just sent shockwaves throughout the whole system. And people like Curtis LeMay and other people, these warmongers that wanted to lob missiles off not only at Moscow but to China and destroy all of that instantaneously, they were just they were beside themselves. I mean, President Kennedy had stopped a total war from happening before the end of his presidency. To his effect, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. And they have to say Bobby Kennedy was a co-president on this. It wasn't just him. And I want the American people to know that if we launch missiles to China to Russia. Russia launched missiles back to us, took 100 million of our people or more. Great Britain wins. This original idea had come out of Great Britain to launch missiles against Moscow at first strike. People need to know this. People need to understand this. Kennedy stopped it to his great detriment, believe me. He was going to fix the monetary system and get us off this bleeding with the Federal Reserve to his great detriment. He was helping the American people, and believe me, he made the conscious decision that if it takes my life, that I will sacrifice that because it's worth what I'm doing. And Jackie knew it too. They were all willing to die for the people of the United States and the world, for the better world. They were willing to do it. And so did Bobby. He made the same choice. How many people can you say that about now in our government? Who would you say would do that?
Not many.
None.
None. That's the right answer. We need the best and the brightest representing us around the world. We have the strongest military, the strongest intelligence, the strongest advancements in science and so forth. We need the best and the brightest pulling strings. We can no longer be manipulated as a lackey of these foreign countries. We can't do this any longer. And the American people are going to be ones that are going to suffer. People around the world, innocent, good people, are going to suffer for generations. For generations.
You mentioned
We
earlier.
are at that crossroad. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You mentioned earlier people who are willing to, and speaking of people who are willing to sacrifice their lives, and along with that, I mean, there has been quite a bit of an effort over the years since Kennedy was assassinated to discredit the family, the Kennedy family. I think that there has been a lot of effort to portray the Kennedy brothers like they were skirt chasing, waste of time, had more money than they knew what to do with, and they
They could skirt chase on their own. They don't have to be running the government to do that. They could do that plenty on their own. They didn't have to be involved in the world events and putting themselves in line. They could have done that on their own. They didn't need to do that.
Absolutely. I see that there is a concerted effort to distort the real history behind the Kennedy legacy and the Kennedy administration in particular. And along with that, there were heroes behind the scenes that we have also had, misinformation given to us in the world.
100%.
And I'd like to
100%.
talk about.
Yes.
I'd like to talk about Oswald in particular. In that, if you could explain.
Well, you can talk about Oswald. You can talk
relationship.
about Julian Assange. If you want to talk about. So I know what he's going through right now.
Absolutely.
He's probably
Let's
not even
talk about
mentally
both.
well right now because they psychologically destroy you when you get in there. They want to
Right.
damage the hell out of you. Okay, so I know what he's going through because I've been through it. I've been through extradition. I've been through the harsh treatments that they put you through, and believe me, it took me a lot of years to get back to some kind of resemblance of a human being. It's not an easy thing. Jesus, if you've got men under you and you're commanding a military operation or anything else, you're a president of the United States or whatever else. God, I'd rather lose my life on a mistake than lose them. I mean, you're the one responsible. You're the responsible party. You don't throw people to the wolves and go to a party. What's wrong with people? What the hell kind of morality do we show? What kind of example are we showing not only to our own citizens but around the world? Oswald was a gung-ho Marine. My lawyer was a gung-ho Marine. I like Marines. They're the kind of people that I'm talking about. But Oswald was a person that wanted to make a difference in the world. He felt strongly about that. I've had somebody that knew him very well that said that talked with me that said he would have liked me, and that was a big compliment for me. I appreciated hearing that. But he is an admirer of the Kennedys. Wasn't an enemy of the Kennedys. He's working with the Kennedys, for God's sake. He gave information back to the Justice Department that was through a number. And Bobby Kennedy knew this number, and they trusted his information. His information was good. Now, the CIA was also using him, but Bobby Kennedy was using him to find out what the CIA was doing, because his job was to protect his brother. So this young man was utilized as a cornerstone in this to help push Bobby Kennedy into a corner. And that's exactly what it did. The way that it happened was not an accident. They had scouted that location since '62. The buildings that were there were CIA controlled. Abraham Zapruder was CIA controlled. The film that you're seeing has been manipulated out of 2 different films put together. The whole thing is ridiculous. You think to yourself, as a normal thinking human being, on a spur of the moment, who would do this? How would you do this? How can the deception be that great? Why would they do that? Because it wasn't done in an instant. These things were thought about as taking out other world leaders and poisoning other world leaders, or biological weapons that have been developed for other purposes and whatever, and then they get manipulated into something that's bad. And it was turned on to President Kennedy because of who he was. It reversed onto him, and it was pre-set up. Lyndon Johnson was in full control of the Pentagon and the NSA and the CIA before Kennedy was hit. There was no guess. Now, he had some concern whether he was going to be shot too, but the idea was that Kennedy was going to go and he was going to get into the war and all that sort of thing, but he was already in control of that. They had to have him in control of that. They weren't going to get the lapse time between Kennedy's death and trying to figure out who was in control. Lyndon Johnson was in control, believe me. Lyndon Johnson was in communication with the people that were orchestrating the day that it happened. He knew the go-ahead had been given, and he was part of the process. And of course, he and Hoover were able to run the investigation and keep the Russians out of it and keep the American people out of it. Hell, the whole goddamn Warren report was initiated not for the American people. They don't care about the American people. The Warren report was put out there to get the Russians off the hook, because the Russians were putting a lot of pressure on the Johnson administration. Hell, they threatened Lyndon Johnson at the Gulf of Tonkin. They said, "Geez, we're gonna blow your whole cover if you don't stop this shit. We're gonna tell everybody your involvement in the Kennedy assassination, who you really are, if you don't back off." It's always about blackmail and leverage and power. The FBI has enough information to bring this government down right now. But will they release it? No. They don't know what will happen, and they have no directive to do that, so they'll hold it. And they'll use it as a power play. Somebody in the government will say, "Well, I have this on you, or you have this on me, and we can coordinate this." But that's not in the interest of the American public. That's in the interest of power and control, which is the sole purpose of all of this. Now you've got the technocrats joining in on all this because their infrastructure is broad-based. They've got access to all the control systems that the NSA records, and the infrastructure of the internet, programming and all this other stuff, and Google and everything else. So now they've gotten so much power. Before, they were just utilized as the NSA comes in and plugs in, or the CIA comes in and plugs. Now they've got power, so now everybody has to be on the same playing field. And this is inherently dangerous, because we don't have a separation of powers any longer. We don't have a democracy. We have an illusion. And the American people are being spoon-fed lies after lies, and we have no open debate on the real issues for the American public. And so we're going to go blindly off the cliff because these people say so. That's insane.
Christopher, why? Because when we had such an obsession with Cuba during JFK's administration, did we completely forget about Cuba once he was assassinated and go directly into Vietnam?
We had Vietnam was the catalyst that they utilized. Cuba was a they hated the idea of missiles being off the coast of Florida down there. But Jesus, the Russians were trying to talk some sense into Castro, and Castro had gone a little haywire. But the idea was to have the UN go down there and the inspectors go down there and get this thing handled. But they had to be given orders to use tactical weapons, tactical nukes down there if the Americans invaded. And Kennedy, by not having that invasion, saved us from getting into war. Now, the CIA, on the other hand, wanted this agenda. They wanted to go first strike on Moscow and China. They wanted to get rid of communism before it got too strong and get it out of the way. And Kennedy, both the brothers, said this is insane. You don't solve a problem by killing hundreds of millions of people because it's just some dilemma that you want to deal with. There are other ways to do this, and we can go directly to the source, and we can have open discussions, and we all breathe the same air, and we all have the same planet, et cetera, et cetera. And this is the idea, that you find a common ground, and nobody wants to be annihilated on either side. So let's find a common ground, and we'll work from there. And we're going to have differences, but we can live with those differences. If I have a neighbor that has a different idea than me, as long as he respects me and I respect him, what's the problem? Why do we have to go kill each other? Kennedy was dangerous because Kennedy made sense, and Kennedy's ideas were working. The changes we were making would have affected the world in a positive way for decades and decades to come. Instead, we got off the rails. Bobby Kennedy was totally crushed, disillusioned, finally decided to go back in '68 to kill him. Well, that was it. Where have we gone from there? We have Gerald Ford, who's an FBI informant, come in. He's just lucky to be there. Then you got Nixon, who had an agreement, with his agreements with Johnson, not to betray that, and he started to crack. The CIA got him out, and on it goes. So eventually, we have just a plain CIA agenda in there since Bush. These guys are slick. When I watch Obama, he's likable. He's a very likable guy. He's likable for a reason. His family, his stepdad, and the Bushes have known each other and done business for many years. He's not what he appears to be, and he's slick, and he's well educated, and he comes across well, and he's what the American hopes to be. The problem is, it isn't there. The betrayal continues.
What can you tell us about the relationship and the trip that JFK Jr. made to Cuba and his relationship with Castro?
He was gearing up. That you see him on the Mount Rushmore taking pictures. That's not coincidence. Yes. He's taking pictures around Mount Rushmore because he wants to run. He's going to step up. Okay. He has relationships with Mr. Trump. He has relationships with the Castro. He has relationships with other people to get these agendas in line, get their green light on this, and move forward. He never got the chance. And if John had become a senator out of New York or the president of the United States, 9/11 would not have happened. Period.
It's a heavy statement to just take a moment of silence on, I think.
Okay, Christopher, we're approaching 2 hours. You have really knocked it out of the park tonight as far as giving us an overview of where we are and what we need to do. Do you have any? Well, first of all, will you come back?
Well, I'd be happy to come back, but I want to say this in the conclusion. If President Kennedy was alive today, or Bobby Kennedy were alive today, they would ask the help of the American people and the people around the world to join together. If you want to honor them, that we're here because they made sacrifices and they made choices to keep us out of war, then honor them by putting your petty differences aside and join together and having open discussions about the problems that we have that are facing our humanity and morality, and let's make these as a joint decision for the betterment of all of us. Not let these bureaucrats, these non-elected officials, or these elected officials that have been bought and paid for, run our lives and choose all this for us. If you honor these individuals, Martin Luther King too, as well. If you want to honor their legacy, if you want to honor their sacrifice, join together. We're all in this line together. We are all in that 9/11 tower together, which is about to implode and come down. We're all in the same boat now. Let's fix this. We have the power to do that. Let people live and let live. Don't be fooled by the lies and the agendas of these elite.
I take this on as a personal responsibility as an American and as a patriot to spread this information and to find common ground with anyone that I have disagreements with, or anyone that sees the world differently than I do. And I think that common ground can absolutely be what is our future and what is the future for our children. And I think that conversation needs to start with everyone that you come into contact with, whether that be friends, family, your people at the local stores, your coworkers, whatever it might be. I think that that's how we start to make sure that we do our parts, every single one of us on this live stream tonight, to make sure that we're opening our eyes to what's really ahead of us if we don't do our part and take a stand. And I want to thank you, Christopher, so much for your words. You really moved me tonight in a way that I can't really put words to. And I so much appreciate your time that you have given to us and given to the American people and the world, really, and getting people to understand where we've been, where we are, and what we have as a responsibility, each and every one of us. And with that,
I agree with all that. Let's make our children proud of us. Let's live backwards, like we were on our deathbed. Let's be proud of ourselves. Let's do the right thing. Not what we can do, but what we should do. Let's do that.
Absolutely. With that, I do have 2 zinger questions. Is that okay? Can I slide in 2 zinger questions?
Throw those at me. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I do want to talk about the fact that you were able to retain some very important information, I believe. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you were able to retain the recordings, the secret recordings from the
they're
Oval
not
Office.
happy. They're not. The CIA was not happy about that in the slightest. But the problem was that I held out. I held out against better sense and people that I watched die and everything else. It was a living hell in there, maximum security. But I held out, and I would not hand over those recordings to have them demolished or put into a position where the American people could never hear them. And so they finally got frustrated with me to the point where the CIA backed off, and the Justice Department said, "Listen, we got to debrief this guy before the Bush election. Let's just get him in there." And they did that, and they reluctantly allowed me to keep it, and that was part of my agreement. And hopefully we can talk more about that when this documentary or something else comes out. But the fact of the matter is, it's a privilege for 25 years, whatever it's been, to hold these White House recordings of what President Kennedy had said that are unedited, and show on the record who he was and what he was doing for the American public, for the world. And I know in my heart that he was a good man. And I'm telling you that he was a good man. And there have been good people all along the way that have fought for us and sacrificed for us and have lost their lives. And let's honor them. Let's honor ourselves. Let's have respect for ourselves. We have to go out of this world. Whenever we do go out of this world, let's be proud of ourselves. Let's not go out whimpering. Let's not go out because we're told to put this gun to your head and pull the trigger. Let's stand up. Let's be proud of ourselves. That's the way I would like to see America react to all of this.
Is there anything on the recordings? I know that that we can hopefully hear about those in detail in the near future. Is there anything on those that you could possibly give us just a little bit of a crumble or a little piece of information that maybe was near and dear to your heart?
I can't unfortunately do that, only because not because of the agreements that are in place. But I can say this. President Kennedy had made one remark saying he was going to be the most unpopular president in 1964 with his own government, the least popular president in history, because the changes he was making were radical enough and against the agenda enough that they were serious enough that he understood that his life was on the line. And he wasn't sure about this election coming up in 64. He was unsure that he was going to make it back in. There was also a scandal that was going to be placed upon him by Lyndon Johnson, trying to make him complicit. Lyndon went down. They were going to try to attach that to the Kennedy brothers as well. They were prepared for that fight. But the fact of the matter is, he was battling a lot of snakes and a lot of enemies to try to do the right thing. And I hope at the right moment, the right time, the majority of the populace can hear some of that, and that has not been edited. It's raw. And I think it's for me. I know it for me was extremely moving, and I hope it would be for the public at large as well.
Okay, I think we lost Lady Justice. Okay, Christopher, I do thank you for your time, for your information, for your patriotism, for the sacrifices that you've made to get this information out to us, because I think it's very, very important. And I just want to thank you for everything that you've done up to this point. And I know you're still fighting. I know you're still in the battle. And so you're to be commended for your courage, because what you've been through is just amazing. And you're still here standing tall and leading the charge. And I just appreciate that. And I hope everyone that reads your book and has heard this interview appreciates that as well.
Well, we're all in the battle now, Paladin. So thank you for having me on, and I appreciate what you guys are doing every day. On the front line really is now to, like yourself, getting this information, whatever information you can from any source, to the public, and letting them make their own choices as free and independent people. And that's what we want. So thank you for that.
And also, I want to express my appreciation to Michelle, because I know she's there supporting you, and she's assisting in every way she can. And I want to recognize her for her efforts, because I know you appreciate them, and we do too.
She's a remarkable human being, and I'm damn lucky to have her.
Well,
she obviously takes the weight of this. She takes the weight of this on by by having me involved in this loop and having children with me and everything else. So it's been a hell of a thing for her to have to deal with. But she's a strong woman, and I'm very grateful for that.
Okay, so we will see you again soon. I hope to have you back for part 2. so we can talk more about everything. We can talk more about your book at that point in time. I think more and more people that have been watching this and listening and following us will have gotten your book and they will have read it. And maybe we can open it up for some questions from the audience at some time in the future. Would you be willing to do that?
I would. I welcome that to have any kind of a conversation, a topic discussed. Uh, I welcome that idea. Yes.
Okay, good. Very good. Okay, so this will
Paladin, I'm
yes.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I would just like to give a special thank you to someone in the chat, Anna Long. If it weren't for Anna, we wouldn't have had this interview today. Anna was the person who sent me your book, Christopher, and it was one of the best gifts I've ever received. So thank you, Anna. She's a huge fan, Christopher. So you have a lot of fans in our chat tonight.
You guys have been more than kind, and I appreciate that you had me on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christopher. And so we will end it here at the 2 hour mark. Again, Christopher, we appreciate your time. All the information you've shared with us tonight, you've gone above and beyond. And I think the message has been delivered. And so I hope people that were here are able to listen to this and watch this again because they're going to get things every time they listen to it. And for those who weren't able to be here tonight, I hope they're able to listen to this in the next few days when we get it up so they can hear your message. And with that, I will wrap it. It's a wrap, everybody. Paladin out.